I mean, you can play credit card roulette, or maybe you have an Amex that'll take the whole thing, but you can go out and get the assets that the seller is going to buy. You could do pre-sale tests. So that's when you go to your seller and you say, listen, I think that we got a deal, but I want to be sure that this is a fit for my customers because this is a tuck-in deal. And so I want to run a test offer to your people. So all it really is you say, and I'll pay you 50% of it. But what you're doing also is you're generating the other 50% to fund the down payment on the deal. Okay? So that's just a pre-sale test. Then private lenders, so these are people who are in the business of lending money, or they're not. Like in our business, when I first got involved with Ryan and Perry said, hey man, we could do $5 million a month if we had $2 million to work with to buy inventory. And I said, awesome. I said, how much do you need? He said, $2 million. I said, okay, $2 million, we can do $5 million a month? Absolutely. Fantastic. So I was talking to my neighbor, and he said, God, I'm bored. I sold my company and I've traveled and I play golf every day, and you're so lucky that you keep working. It's cute that you're working, but you're lucky that you get to do it. I wish I could too. Is there anything that we could do together? And I said, as a matter of fact, if you would loan us $2 million, then, that'd be great. I'll give you a higher return and we'll involve you in the business, not as an equity owner. He said, I'd like to have equity. I said, no. But we gave him 12% on his money on $2 million. So it was great for him, way more than he could get anywhere else. And we had the $2 million, just like that. I mean, it took like a week to reduce the purchase price. Just tell the seller, look, instead of giving you that amount up front, I would like to have you continue to consult. And it's really important to me that you continue to be involved with the business. So let's carve that $200,000 out and have you consult at $10,000 a month. Now the seller might say, well, tax-wise, that's ordinary income. It's not capital gain. And then you could always say, okay, I'll pay you for 22 months, right? I'll make that up for you or whatever. Next would be a not non-consensual, but non-competing equity split. The non-consensual one doesn't work as well. I've tried it. That's where you have somebody else who's coming in for equity that's going to be active in the business, as opposed to a co-investor who's going to be passive. The non-competing person or company, you're basically saying, hey, I don't do coaching, you do coaching. I am going to use this for recruiting for my business, like in real estate. So how about if you come in for 30% and I'll come in for 70%, and 30% they're coming in for is what you need for the down, right? An integrator investor. So hopefully none of you are ever going to operate any of these businesses that you're buying. So you're going to have an integrator. If you know, is that rocket fuel that is? Yeah. So they have visionaries and integrators. So you're the visionary. You've got the integrator that's going to come in the business and actually do the operations. Let them buy in. In one of my businesses, a direct response business, I've got two people. I've got my banker, who is the director of private banking for U.S. Bank, and a enrolled agent that did a tax controversy thing for us. And both of them had begged me for years to be able to invest in the business. So I bought a business and I said, you guys say you want to run the business. And this is great because they can run businesses. They are detail-oriented people. This happened because the company that I owned with two other partners was in litigation, and we were at the law office of the opposing counsel, and my partners were attorneys, and so was I at the time. And so we're at the guy's law office negotiating the settlement, and they're sick of the lawsuit, which had been going on for about 8 months. And so we were out in the parking lot talking about how we're going to go forward with this. And they were like, I hate this. This is stupid. I wish we weren't involved. And I was like, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, do you want to sell? And they said, yeah, I want to sell. And I said, I'll buy you out right now without settling this lawsuit, because I'm absolutely sure we can do it. And I know you guys are worried about it. And I said, but I want you to know, I think we're going to settle it, and I think it's a mistake. And this is a business that at the time was probably wasn't making a ton, but maybe $30,000 a month, right, in profit. So we were each making 10 grand a month. I said, all right. I said, I will give you $10,000 cash each, 1 month of what your share is, to buy you out right now, and I will take over the litigation. And they said, done. And don't ask why, but I had $20,000 cash in my car. And I literally took it out and handed it to each of them, and they were thrilled. That business I have owned now for 25 years, and it makes about $3 million a year. So one of my more fun deals. So then, having bought it for $10,000 each for 20 total, and not being able to help myself, I went to these two people who had been begging me to come into that very business because they saw we literally would walk into the bank with duffel bags, multiple people with duffel bags of checks, because it was a direct response business. We got all kinds of checks in the mail, and which I think is fun, by the way. If you've never done that, it's really cool to get duffel bags of checks. And the bank is kind of nervous when you first come in. I recommend that you wear something to keep you warm, like a ski mask, and then so I talked to these two people, and so I told each of them, I said, you said you want to come into the business. Here's what it's making. Here's what it's going to make, and here's what it's going to cost for you to come in. And each of them invested $300,000 later that week to come into the business. And they have been my partners ever since, and it's kind of fun. So it's just amazing, all the deals that are out there. And I like to tell you these things just because it's funny how you fall into stuff like that, right? It's just, you just be ready. Always have $20,000 cash in your car. I'm sorry?
Was that after the lawsuit was settled?
They came in after I settled the lawsuit. Yeah. Bought the partners out before, had those people come in after. Other thing is to have employees or contractors invest. See if they want to invest. A lot of employees are interested in investing. A lot of them might have money to do that with. And contractors, people that are service contractors especially as well. They know the business. The other thing you can do is, let's say the seller wants, I talked to one of the guys that was in here yesterday, I said, what do you want if you exit? And he said, I want a Vacheron Constantin watch. And I said, how much is that Vacheron Constantin watch? And he said, it's $350,000. And I said, great. So if I'm trying to buy your business, what are you going to do with the first $350,000 you get? I'm buying that $350,000 watch. Great. What if I bought it for you and gave that to you instead, and we reduced the amount that I had to give you up front by $350,000? Would you do that? He said, absolutely. So you can go out and buy it. I mean, you can play credit card roulette, or you can maybe have an Amex that'll take the whole thing, but you can go out and get the assets that the seller is going to buy on credit so that you can give that to them as a down payment, because they don't care. They're just that's why it's so important to find out what they want.